Garamil Magad, and I want to thank Sinn Féin for tabling the motion and for involving all of us. And Minister, I have no doubt that your heart is in the right place, and I have no doubt of your bona fides. I've attended meetings with you. But when I look at this motion, which is a very short motion, signed by almost 70, I think 68 TDs, if my maths are correct, and that motion asks for very little. It actually just simply asks to provide the funding required to fully reopen day and other disability centres, subject of course to complying with COVID-19 guidelines and requirements. You couldn't possibly disagree with that. And then the next thing, provide the additional funding, resources and capital investment required to guarantee sustainable capacity with disability for people with disability and dementia. Now, how could you disagree with that? You don't. I mean, you're nodding. And so I'm not sure what happens to ministers when they sit on that side of the... And I'm not being smart, because I know your bona fides. And here we have a 3.5-page reply, putting another motion on a simple motion that's simply saying, let's reopen the services and let's provide adequate funding. And I'm not sure. So I begin to doubt the bona fides of the government when I see that type of reply. And I wonder, why is that necessary? And I would appeal to women to do it differently. Honestly, I simply would appeal to you. Stop this. Stop being captured by department speak. This is so simple. It's not simple to implement. But the motion is simple. Let's join together as women. Include, of course, the men. Absolutely. But let's provide services that you know on the ground are not there. Oras Vicdara in Connemara, in Carrow, Creelar na Gaeltachta, tá sé dúnta. Agus tá sé dúnta gan ein service. Tá gá service I dún I Clare Galway, agus in Galia, tá sé dúnta freshen. So when I look at your speech, and thank you for the written speech, and there's a little bit of self-congratulations in relation to the funding, and let me congratulate you on the funding. But I congratulate you more if you put the funding in context. You see, and the context then, if we look at the Oireachtas Disability Group pre-submission, pre-budget submission, and they put it in context just a little bit, 2 pages, very simple to read, and they tell us that 13% of those on carers allowance are over 70. Can you imagine that? 13% are over 70, doing the hardest work with the least pay. 643,000 people in Ireland, and by 2026 it will increase and so on. I'm not going to read out all these figures, but they're there, and then they give very specific things that are required. And then I look at your speech, the department speech, and I say, what is going on? Who has done an analysis of how many centres are closed? I've asked these practical questions, so have other TDs. You haven't told us. How many centres in Galway are there? How many have reopened? How many have not reopened? Why? What's necessary? Rather than me giving anecdotal evidence. And then for those people who are caring for loved ones at home, I think of somebody very near where I live, I won't say where in Galway, and no respite. Absolutely no respite. And you're probably sending emails before you became a minister, asking for respite. Now, what are you going to do about that? You'll have our full support. We're going to support you, but let's have an analysis of the problem on the ground in the first place. What is the scope of the problem on the ground, and what do we need to do to deal with that as women who see things differently? And then when we look at the outsourcing of, I hear my colleague laughing here, but there are very good men in the world as well. I'd be delighted if they worked with this, and I wish Deputy Moynihan the best as the new chair. But the outsourcing of services, Deputy Alan Kelly referred to this, Fergus Findlay. Please read it, because, so I'd like if you'd have referred to it in your speech perhaps then, because it raises serious questions. One, the service is in crisis. Two, it's been handed back with its problems. But number three, the amount of money being paid out in salaries, way above 100,000, and also the problems identified. And so the service that's not making money is being handed back to the state, but the property is not being handed back, or any of the services that are making money. And then we have the Health Executive internal review, not referred to by yourself. And again, we're reliant on papers like the Cork Examiner and the Times to tell us these things. And there's an internal review by the Health Executive telling us the current model for the provision of service for people with disabilities is not sustainable. Now, I'll finish up. I won't go over time because I'm always giving out when I'm in the chair. But will that report be published? And the capacity review that you referred to, can you please give us the date of the publication of that?
Thank you, Deputy. Now we go over to the government.